Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program Teacher Certification course. If you're here at the Peaceful Solution headquarters and in your wherever you are around the world, please be seated. We're going to be picking up in Chapter 1 of the Respect Unit, where we left off. If you're watching online, go ahead and download the manual on our Facebook page at the top. There's a little drop-down menu that has the manuals. Also has an overview of the Peaceful Solution you can look at if you want to learn more about the whole entire program. But we're in the Respect Unit, which is the 4th unit of the Junior High series. And we're in Chapter 1. And we're going to pick up, I believe, let me see if my trusty glasses here. We're going to be picking up on page 14 where we left off. The question of the day, which says, why do people choose to disrespect themselves and others? We'll recap a little bit from the last class. Remember, the title of this particular chapter, go back to page 3, is The Value of Respect. And, of course, remember that respect is to recognize the value of people and things and to treat them with consideration, care, and concern. And also on page 5, there's something else we need to always keep in our mind. We need to keep in mind these steps to showing respect, value, appreciate, and respect. We have to learn to value something. Like we could just say, for instance, education. Value in education. Appreciated education, respect the education that you receive. Those are all steps to showing respect for anything, whether it's property, whether it's someone else, whether it's your environment, whatever it is. If you want to learn to respect it, if you want to learn to, as it says, recognize the value of people and things, that would be your first step, is to value it. Learn to value these things. When something's valuable, that means, it's worth something. Okay, it has worth. Okay, and everybody has worth, whether we see that worth in them or not. Okay, we have to realize that everybody has worth, and so does everything, even the animals, the microorganisms, things you can't see. They all have worth. They all have value. They're doing a job for us. And we also talked about skipping up to page 10, we talked about these common forms of respect, respectful interactions like courtesy and kindness, fairness, honesty, and obedience. And we showed how respect is the foundation on page 11 of all positive relationships. So if respect is the foundation of all positive relationships, disrespect would be the foundation of all disrespectful relationships. And as I said in the last class, if it's a disrespectful, anytime disrespect starts in any relationship, if it doesn't stop at some point and someone doesn't realize and what they're doing and they don't change, eventually that relationship will dissolve. It will not last. So it's important to learn how to respect through the Peaceful Solution program so we can have those peaceful relations with others. So page 13, we went over that disrespect is not normal, and there's different forms like verbal disrespect, physical disrespect, self-disrespect, disrespect for the environment, disrespect for property, and then there's other forms of disrespect like rude or vulgar gestures and inappropriate public behavior like playing songs with vulgar language in a public place. And then we went into page 14. That's where we left off in the middle of the page. So what I want to do is jump back to, let's see, it's going to be LP1F. And we want to go back over the steps so we can refresh our mind where we're at. We're on step number 8. Talks about the optional activity. Have students turn to page 14 in their handbooks and read the section entitled Question of the Day. Then play the song Respect, which we will do tonight. and we're going to allow students to discuss this section and how it relates to the words of the song found on page 15. Have students take turns reading the scenarios found on pages 16 through 18, allow time for students to answer and discuss the questions. So let's go and look at the question of the day. Why do people choose to disrespect themselves? And it says, I'm going to go over this just to rehearse. It says there's many reasons why disrespect seems to be a normal part of society, and one reason is the entertainment industry. Did you know that what you see on television and in the movies influences your thoughts and interactions? We see disrespectful behavior on television, talk shows, sitcoms, dramas, and even commercials. In movies, aggression and retaliation, or getting even, are often the main theme, with plots that focus on the hero's quest for vengeance. You know, somebody does somebody wrong and they go out and they try to settle the score with their enemy, or the person that they perceive as their enemy, right? And cursing, name calling, says we also hear disrespectful language in songs and music videos. Cursing, name calling, murder, and violence are presented for our enjoyment as a package of entertainment, you know. And, you know, we learned in, you know, in the self-control unit when we talked about desensitization, which we'll talk a little bit more about here in a minute. There was a guy that, there was a colonel, I think it was a colonel in the Killology Institute, that was saying that, you know, these video games were actually training children to be warriors, you know, training them to be in the military, training them to kill. And, you know, the same exact movements, hand coordination, eye coordination, things that they use for the video games were, you know, the video games were developed by military personnel, helped in developing these video games so they can make them more real, more realistic, which would be, in the end, a benefit for the military, because the military could train the children through video games how to fight, how to kill the enemy. And so, you know, later on, when a child that, you know, when the recruiters get a hold of them in the hallway at school, you know, in the high school, and try to, you know, bring them into joining the military, they'll already be a perfect marksman, you know, because they've been playing point and shoot video games their whole life. So I remember watching another, I think it was 60 Minutes or one of those programs where it showed another Army officer that was saying that, man, the children today, he says, you don't even have to really put them through boot camp anymore. They've already been through boot camp, and with Mr. T yelling at them, and you know these figures on TV that like to raise their voice and, you know, yell, and he said that they're already expert marksmen through the point and shoot video games. So, you know, these things, I know that parents, when they buy these things, are not thinking about that. They're not thinking that, you know, I want to train my children for war, but we got to think of the end result of what we're doing. You put a gun in a child's hand, whether it's a toy, when they're young, when it's a toy, you know, they're probably going to grow up thinking that it's okay to have a gun in their hand. And if they point their gun at somebody else, which they normally do when you buy them a gun, they're going to think it's normal to point a gun at somebody else. Okay? And then when they turn 18 or 19 and they point a gun at somebody else, you're going to be going, hey, boy, put that gun down. What are you doing? And they're going to be like, well, what's the problem, Mom? I've been doing this all my life. What's the problem? Well, boy, that's a hot gun. You put it down, right? Well, we got to think about what we're doing, because we're the end result of these things. You've seen some of the pictures. I've showed some of the scarring and the wounds and the suffering that people have gone through when faced with war. Okay, when they have bombs dropped on their city, or tanks roll through their neighborhood, atomic bombs dropping on them, etc. By the way, could you put up the first slide? Because I want to talk about that word desensitized. Just to remind you, the word desensitized means to make someone less likely to feel shock or distress at scenes of cruelty, violence, or suffering by overexposure to such images. Like they constantly see these violent scenes, or they see people on talk shows disrespecting their host or disrespecting the guest, by cutting them off in a conversation. That's a form of violence with your mouth. When you verbally assault people or you belittle them or whatever, and you see a lot of that on the television even. And on that that little boy there that's watching the TV, he's just watching the news, the evening news, and the evening news has a lot of scenes of violence, war, fighting, death, destruction, crime, right? So we see so much of it that we tend to think, well, this is just a part of life, because when you turn on the evening news, if you watch your local news for 30 minutes, at least 20 minutes is spent on somebody stealing, some kind of theft, some kind of robbery, some kind of rape, some kind of murder, some kind of crime. Probably might even talk about the Ukraine war for a little bit. Then they might start talking about, other mayhem taking place in the world. And then for the last 10 minutes, they're going to go into sports where they can show you some guy getting his heart stopped, when he gets hit by somebody in a football game, right? This is why we've been teaching and warning. And I think, I don't think I've ever seen anything like that, what occurred the other night in the Buffalo Bills game. By the way, I wasn't watching the game, but I saw it on the news. And I don't think I've ever seen that many people stop and really reflect for a moment what they're doing. That's the first time I've also seen them postpone a game because somebody got hurt. I've seen players get paralyzed on a field, and they didn't stop the game. They just rolled the guy out or took him out in the ambulance, and the game just kept going. But the other night, for some reason, no, they couldn't do it. They couldn't play. Could this mean that they're starting to see what's really taking place? It's a violent sport, guys. I played football in junior high school. It was rough, but these guys in pro sports, they're hitting to hurt you. They're aiming to hurt. Okay? And I don't quite frankly know how most of those players even get up after a lot of plays. They must have a lot of armor on because they get hit and then people are going to break legs. They're trying to hurt you. They're not out there just playing a game. They're out there actually trying to hurt the other player. I hope that this event the other night will cause them to reflect a little more, and I'd really like to see them really second. I see that they're starting to have second thoughts about what they're doing, and that's a great thing. I just hope that it doesn't blow over and they go right back to what they're doing. I hope they start to really consider the concussions, the things, all the damage that's taking place with these players. Many of these players get concussions. They commit suicide because it's like war. It's a war game. Football is a war game. Make no mistake. Anyway, I'll quit harping on that. Let's go back to the reading here. Remember the word desensitization. It says many studies, I'm in the middle of page 14. It says many studies have proven that repeatedly witnessing acts of violence, aggression, and inappropriate sexual conduct as they are presented on television and in the movies desensitizes or makes one unaware of inappropriate moral behavior. And in this case, I showed you the definition of desensitization where it said, they show you these images so much that you've seen them so much that it just seems normal. It doesn't really bother you anymore. It's kind of like a drug addict. When they first take the drug, they get high really easy, but after a while of taking it, they have to take more and more and more because their tolerance level builds up. It's the same thing with violence in the movies. The the first violent act you see as a child, you probably think, whoa, wow. And you probably might even cry and you might even get scared. But the more you watch these things over and over and over, pretty soon it doesn't faze you anymore. It doesn't bother you. And you actually build up your tolerance for violence and you want more. And you got to see more heinous things done because your tolerance level for blood and violence, your thirst for blood and violence grows as you grow and you as you watch these things. But in this case, it says that the more you see people engaging in premarital sex, or you see them getting angry, in a movie and not handling their anger the appropriate way, you start to think that's normal. It's normal that everybody sleeps around. It's normal that 12-year-old and 14-year-old are upstairs in the movie in their bedroom and no adult supervision. You think it's normal because, it's on Disney or whatever channel you're watching. You're thinking that's normal behavior because it's on TV. The adults know what's going on. The adults are letting you watch it. So you don't think there's anything wrong with this. What could be wrong with it? It's just entertainment, right? That's what you're thinking in your mind. And then the media gives this false impression that everybody does that, and the truth is, yeah, a lot of people do it, but not everybody's doing it, because I know everybody in the Peaceful Solution's not doing it. The people that come to Peaceful Solution and those that have been taught by the Peaceful Solution aren't doing it. And there are others that are seeing, there are other people all over the world that see the harm in these things. There's some countries that don't want any part of some of the entertainment that we put out here in Hollywood, and I guess Hollywood would be the main movie hub, of New York and Hollywood probably, but a lot of countries don't want that trash in their country. They do their best to try to filter it out. And then we look at them like, those leaders are cruel to their people because they don't let them have, movies that depict premarital sex and all these other things. Well, a lot of times they're just trying to protect their society from getting worse or losing the moral values that they have in their society. So they try to keep it out, kind of like parents trying to guard their home from the influence of inappropriate movies, video games, songs, etc. Sometimes they get a little bit too, these world leaders, they don't have the proper training. So sometimes they go a little bit overboard in doing so, in trying to guard and protect their people. But nonetheless, they do see the danger in these things. Now it says another reason why people are disrespectful is that they act impulsively and do not practice self-control. Can you put up the next slide? I was going to show that one too. They make it look so normal, even for a child. This violence. In the Bugs Bunny or the Tom and Jerry or Itchy and Scratchy or Itchy and Scratchy's primetime television. So they show these things on Saturday morning, but they also show them on, Sunday night or whatever night that show's on. And children are attracted to animation. They love animation. So, but some of the heinous things that take place in this animation, a lot of those cartoons, if you recall, we went over this. These cartoons were not even made for children originally. Like Bugs Bunny, that was adult entertainment. They used to show Bugs Bunny cartoons at the movie theater before they showed the main film. And it was directed toward adults. It was not meant for children. But why should adults even be watching that? Ask yourself, remember, adults are only big children. They got bigger clothes. They got more money, bigger toys. But it affects them the same way as it affects children. It's all negativity. You want to put negativity in your mind, it's going to have a negative effect on your character. Go ahead and go to the next slide, because I think this is really interesting too, because this is kind of indicative of the effect that this has, showing all this violence and war on television, where it makes it seem like war is just a normal part of existence. You know, we're always going to have war because, you know, after all, you know, people are people. They go to war, right? Notice this anti-war protest in 1966 in front of the nation's capital. And then 50 years later in 2016, there's an anti-war protest. In the one in 66, it looks like there's, you know, 500,000 people out there. And the one in 2016 looks like there's about 10 people, right? Does that mean there's only that much against war? Well, there's a lot of people in the world that are fed up with war. But I think the reason they don't show up to these anti-war protests is because they know it's worthless. Going out and protesting war, what's that going to do? Standing out there with signs saying, we don't want the war, do you think that's going to change the mind of the warriors that want the war? Of the what do you call them? The weapons manufacturers, you think that's going to change their mind because you don't want war? You're standing out there with a picket sign in Washington. You think that's going to make them decide not to build any more armaments? You know, there was a man, his name was Bawa Jain. He was a friend of the author of the Peaceful Solution, Israel Hawkins. And when Israel Hawkins went to the UN to speak in front of the UN in the year 2000, Bawa Jain told him, he was a high figure in the UN. He told him, you know, Israel Hawkins said, you know, we want to stop all wars. You know, the aim of the Peaceful Solution is to bring a stop to all wars. And Bawa Jain told him, that's impossible. He says, you realize that the nuclear industry alone is like a, you know, what was it? 100 billion, what was it? $850 billion a year enterprise. You know, you think you're just going to, you know, that they're just going to lay down their armaments so we can have peace? Well, they would if they really listened to what Israel Hawkins says. If they really listened to what he says in the Peaceful Solution, they actually would be willing to do so. If they understood that there's actually more money to be made with peace than there is war. There actually is. That's what they're missing. There's actually, they could have everything that their heart desires that doesn't bring harm to them. Everybody on this earth could, if they would just stop building the weapons and they would stop fighting and they would put all that resources into peace and build the earth rather than destroy it. They could actually they wouldn't have to have all these taxes to build weapons and kill babies and whatever else we have to do with our tax money, right? They wouldn't have to do that. See, they're not seeing the big picture. They're really not seeing that. If they saw that, they would say, hey, you're right. You're actually right. If they actually got all this information and they actually considered it, they would see what I see right now about how everybody on earth could live in luxury if we weren't doing these things, if we weren't teaching war, if we weren't fighting, if we weren't, destroying property, we were just building. Okay, so anyway, can you put up the next slide? Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Yeah, okay, so just pull the slide down just for a second. The bottom of page 14, it says, and the reason I'm having to do that, guys, is I don't have my little monitor up here where I normally can see the slides. So now I gotta use that because my phone's down right now. So I apologize. And it says another reason why people are disrespectful is that they act impulsively and they don't practice self-control. Now, if you can put the slides back up, there's a slide with a credit card. If you could go forward or something, I think there it is right there. Let's look at this one first and we'll go back to the other one. But let's talk about the word impulsive. You've heard of impulsive buying, right? Where people, they buy items, they go to the store. Sometimes they're not even really going to buy anything. They're just looking around and then they see something and they buy it because they got their credit cards, right? So they think, well, I got my credit card, I could afford that. And they go ahead and buy it, but they don't stop and think about, well, later on, there's going to be bills coming in the mail, right? Now, children, let me explain something to you. Look at the monitor there. You see the bills in the mail? The one on the top right, those bills in the mail, those are called money bills, right? Those are actually money. Those aren't the bills that we're talking about. That's actually money in that top one. The one on the bottom, when you shop with your credit cards, that's what comes in the mail. Well, the one on the bottom, see all those paper bills in the envelopes? That's what comes later when you go shopping with credit cards, those bills. You see that stack of bills in that person's mailbox? That's from buying with those credit cards at the top there. So you got to tell children that, look, when you tell children about getting a bill in the mail, make sure they understand it's not, a $100 bill or a $20 bill, right? It's where you have to pay it back with interest. That means if you bought something with your credit card for $20 and you have to pay interest of 14%, well, you're going to add another $3 to whatever you just bought. You're going to have to pay back $23 now for a $20 item, okay, depending on whatever your interest rates are on your credit card. But that's the result of not stopping and thinking and being impulsive, okay? Not stopping and thinking about the consequences of what you're getting ready to say or do. That's what impulsive is. Impulsive isn't doing things without thinking. It's doing things without thinking about the consequences about what you're getting ready to do. And in this case, when you go out and spend, you need to stop and think, hey, in the end, I'm going to get a bill in the mail, and I have to be able to pay these bills. I got to be able to pay my debts. And there's a lot of people, I think, right now in America, 10 years ago, I think the last statistic I heard is most Americans were at least $45,000, $50,000 in credit card debt, average. That's a lot of debt. So we really got to be smart. I like to quote a man. His name is, what was that guy's name on the radio? He's, who? Paul Harvey. No, not Paul Harvey. He was a financial guru, but one of his favorite sayings was, act your wage. In other words, you don't spend more than what you have. Okay. You always budget yourself, you don't go doing these things where later on, and then what's going to occur when you get that stack of bills in the mail? You're going to be upset. You're going to be really upset. But who you have to blame for it? Who made the choice to spend? It was our choice, right? So what are we upset at? We're going to be upset at the bill collector, right? We're going to be upset at the bill collector, and the bill collector is not the one that told us to go out and spend, right? So we got to stop and think about what we're doing and use self-control in our actions and not act impulsively. So back to page 14, it says another reason why people are disrespectful is that they act impulsively and they don't practice self-control. So let's look at what self-control is on that slide I told you to skip. Okay, so what is self-control? From page 4 and page 21 in the self-control unit, we learned that self-control is controlling, that is, guiding or directing what we think because our thoughts lead to feelings, controlling what we feel because our feelings lead to actions, and controlling how we act or how we behave because our decisions lead to actions which lead to rewards or consequences. And that's every time, okay? Self-control is like that. That's the steps to self-control, what self-control is. And everything always starts with what we think, our thoughts. So when you think about buying that item, you need to also consider, you have to count the cost. You have to think, okay, well, do I need it right now? Is it something I need or is it something I want? Which we'll get into in a later unit, the responsibility unit, about needs versus wants. Do we need it or do we want it? That should be our first question. We should also ask ourselves, can I afford it? Is it something that I can afford right now, or should I wait, for another week or two and save my money to get it? These are the kind of thoughts we need to start having before we do things to practice this self-control. It doesn't take long to do that. If you're at the store and you're thinking, it just takes a few seconds to think about it. You'll know you can make these decisions pretty quickly most of the time. But everything starts with our thoughts. It says self-control is the foundation of moral behavior. When you practice self-control, you stop and carefully consider whether your thoughts and feelings will lead to actions that are morally correct and in your best interest, or in the best interest of the credit card company, right? Because they don't mind charging you interest. They're not interested in your financial condition. They just want to make sure you pay your bill. They just want your money. So you need to stop and think before you decide to give them all your money. Okay, do you really have that much money to give? Quite frankly, I don't even know how people I don't get out as much as I used to because I'm working from home right now, but I used to drive by these restaurants and I'd see the parking lot was full, at these major restaurants. Parking lots were full, and I'm thinking, where are people getting the money to spend? Where do they get this money? Or you go to Lowe's or Home Depot or one of these places and the parking lot's packed, and people are coming out with all kinds of stuff, and you're thinking, where are people getting all this money? And then, you drive by and you see new subdivisions going up in neighborhoods, new neighborhoods being formed, and you're like, where are people getting this money to build? Where's all this money coming from? Well, the thing is, most of this money is coming out of thin air. Nobody really has any money. They're pretending they have money. Okay? They're in debt. Our country's in debt. $32 trillion in debt right now. I showed you what $1 trillion looks like, and I showed you what $20 trillion look like, and you could stack it on pallets, all over Lower Manhattan, all around the Statue of Liberty, and in $100 bills. And they just passed another $1.75 trillion package. Wow. And they're smiling about it. They're actually taking photo opportunities, and they're actually congratulating themselves on these things. It's $32 trillion in debt. Wow. This is to our shame. This is to our shame. It's shameful. But we're acting like this is normal. Like, we're thinking this is normal. We're thinking that's normal. It's normal to pass. It's normal. Now, people in Washington, D.C., listen up. I'm not mad at you, okay? But I want you to hear me. When you roll in a $4,200 page bill, 4,200 pages, and you want to pass that bill in 2 hours without anybody reading that bill? Do you realize what could be stuck in that bill? Do you realize all the things they put in those bills, what they piggyback in bills? On page 567, $3 million for study on Jello wrestling in Antarctica. I'm not joking. This is things that they stick in those bills. They call it pork barrel, It's a great name for it. It's very greedy. And it's your money. Some of the things that they stuck in this last bill that they just passed, that people were finding, I was appalled. I was like, you got to be joking me. And they said, yeah, well, they passed it, and it was thousands of pages, and no one even really read it. I can't believe that that's what we're doing as adults. You're not reading the contract. You're not reading what you're getting into, And you know what? You're not just getting yourself into it, you're getting all of us into this. So whatever's in that bill, that's law. Once it's signed, and it's already been signed, it's already been signed. Once they sign that bill, it's law. You can't change it. You realize how many things they can stick in a bill that could be detrimental to you and your children? I think I'd be a little more concerned than we are right now about things that are going on. We need to start really, really deeply considering what is taking place with people. It's out of control. It really is. It's out of control. We need to get this Peaceful Solution Character Education Program at least into their face, at least into their, we need to take another trip to Washington, D.C., it looks like. We haven't been there in quite a while. At least get it in there, if it's out of sight, it's out of mind. At least put it in their face where they can be, considering these things, because this is really just the things that I'm reading. I'm like, I can't even believe this. I can't even believe that we're actually congratulating ourselves on $32 trillion in debt. Would you congratulate yourself if you were even $100,000 in debt? Would you be congratulating yourself? No, you'd be in a lot of emotional turmoil. Your marriage would probably be a wreck, because, most marriages end nowadays because of financial difficulty. It's a mess. It really is. But again, on page 14, controlling anger and other emotions by carefully considering the possible consequences of your actions leads to positive, respectful choices. Yet the tendency in society today is to respond with disrespect when negative emotional situations arise. Somebody I read today, somebody said, why is it that people say that video games are causing people to pick up guns and go and shoot school shootings, all this stuff? They didn't have video games for 6,000 years. Yeah, but you know what? A video game is only just another form of teaching. A television show is just another form of teaching. Right? It's just another medium of teaching. It's just another way to teach somebody something. Well, what did they have before the video games and the television? Oh, they had schools where they taught them to fight in war and that war was glorious. They had military academies, right? So they were learning war the whole time. They've had military academies since the dawn of man. So they've been teaching war. They didn't need a television to do it. They were fighting wars, right? They didn't need a video game to teach them how to do it. But the video game violence now and the television violence and everything, it just makes it more prevalent. It gets into everywhere now. Now it can go into even little huts out in the middle of nowhere in Africa. Everybody's got a TV. No matter how poor they are, they always seem to have a TV. Even in the remotest village of the Timbuktu, they got a TV where they can turn on, 200 channels at their disposal, whatever channel you want. Just turn it on and, watch whatever mayhem or sexual misconduct or whatever you want to watch, right? It makes it more prevalent all over now. But he's right. Yeah, they didn't need video games. But the point is, it's just another teaching. Just like songs are teaching. Songs teach us. Which we're getting ready to hear a song. You guys like songs, right? Okay, great. But before we play it, let me make sure I'm not supposed to do something else here. Excuse me. Okay, yeah. All right, so I went ahead and I put up we'll have the lyrics so you can see the lyrics to the song. The name of the song is called Respect. And go ahead and play the song.
disrespect, but it's not right. Cheating and stealing will only cause a fight. It's respect that we must always show, no matter who you are or where we go. Be honest, truthful, faithful, and fair. When we show respect, it proves how much we care. We show love by the way we treat others. If we respect one another.
We need to love so we can turn away hate, and rebelling against authority is a huge mistake. Many try to love, but they don't know how, so they try to confuse you with a hug and a smile. Love is respecting each other, and if it comes
Society teaches disrespect, but it's not right. Cheating and stealing will only cause a fight. It's respect that we must always show, no matter who you are or where we go. Be honest, truthful, faithful, and fair. When we show respect, it proves how much we care. We show love by the way we treat others. If we respect one another.
we need to love so we can turn away hate, and rebelling against authority is a huge mistake. Many try to love, but they don't know how, so they try to confuse you with a hug and a smile. Love is respecting each other, and if it comes down to it, love is protecting one another. My respect flows like a river, and if I see someone in need, then respect is what I give them.
Respect is the right way. Let's show respect every day to everyone that you see, to your friends, neighbors, and society,
so we can all live peacefully.
Respect is the right way. Let's show respect every day to everyone that you see, to your friends, neighbors, and society,
so we can all live peacefully.
When I look around, it's disrespect I see. No peace, love, or harmony. Always remember to show honesty. Obeying rules guards one's safety. Don't let anyone guide you to do wrong. Show respect for yourself and stand strong. Friends can lead you away but not bring you back. Self-control, think before you act.
Dressing modestly is the right decision, cause your body is your special possession. Don't let anyone touch without asking. If they do, then they would be trespassing. Let's respect others' privacy, then we all will live peacefully. So hold on to the peaceful solution, and that's my conclusion.
Respect is the right way. Let's show respect every day to everyone that you see, to your friends, neighbors, and society,
so we can all live peacefully.
Respect is the right way. Let's show respect every day to everyone that you see, to your friends, neighbors, and society,
so we can all live peacefully.
Respect is the right way. Let's show respect every day to everyone that you see, to your friends, neighbors, and society,
so we can all live peacefully.
Respect is the right way. Let's show respect every day to everyone that you see, to your friends, neighbors, and society,
so we can all live peacefully.
All right, great song, great song. That's just one of the many really, really great songs that Peaceful Solution has. There's many, many songs that are available. If you go to peacefulsolution.org or email us, we can try to get you some of this music as well, so you can turn away from that stuff that's got the disrespectful, inappropriate, and immoral language that's being taught out there. This is something you can blast, and people will probably go, "What? Respect? Oh, okay." Okay, so let's go ahead, and now we're going to look at these scenarios on page. We're going to look at a scenario on page 16, and I think I have a slide for that as well for the viewers at home. Okay, so it says, read the following scenarios and discuss the questions that follow. So scenario 1 says, it was around 2:30 in the morning when I caught my teenage daughter, Trisha, creeping into the house, intoxicated. I was shocked and lost for words when I saw her stumbling down the hallway, barely able to walk, vomiting as she went along. I cleaned her up and helped her to bed. The next day, I questioned Tricia about what had occurred the night before. Her excuse was that all her friends were drinking and she did not want to be left out or be considered a geek. When I pointed out the seriousness of what she had done, sneaking out at night and getting drunk, she argued that it was okay and no big deal. She said she knew that I would be upset and would not understand. So, question, did Tricia show respect for herself? No, because remember, Tricia showed no respect. She gave in to the peer pressure, which we talked about. Remember, we talked about the different forms of, my mind's going blank, influences. Peer pressure is an influence. Remember, we went over that in an earlier unit. She gave in to peer pressure by partaking in risky behavior and abusing alcohol. First of all, Tricia obviously is a younger girl. She shouldn't be drinking in the first place. So she didn't practice self-control. She gave in to peer pressure and risky behavior. Risky behavior. Remember, risky behavior is behavior. You know, what can occur when a young person, a teenager, is drinking alcohol at a party? I can remember many things that occurred over my teenage years at parties where people ended up drinking and driving, going home drunk and getting in a car accident, killing themselves. Or I had one acquaintance in high school that he got drunk, and then he got, you know, when you get drunk, you're 6 foot and bulletproof. I guess he went and tried to rob a liquor store and ended up getting shot and killed. You know, I can remember many, many different incidents where girls got pregnant, girls got raped, boys got in fights with other boys, you know, and I'm talking about teenagers at parties. You know, I tend to think, you know, we when we think of parties, you know, parents have some, they can't really possibly be thinking a party is where they're going. You know, when their daughter or their son says, "Mom, can I go to the party on Friday night?" They can't possibly think that this party, you know, they're all sitting around eating ice cream and cake and, you know, blowing those little, you know, things that, those little horns or whatever, you know, they're all sitting around. Now, do you really know that's not a party, right? When your child asks to go to a party, you know what they're asking you to go to? They're asking you to go somewhere where they're drinking alcohol, where they're doing drugs, marijuana, cocaine, fentanyl. Okay? They're going to parties where they're doing drugs and they're drinking and they're having sex. Sometimes 2 boys with 1 girl. Sometimes gang raping taking place. Sometimes, but there's always something going on that's bringing harm at that party. I can't believe it. I hear, I know parents, we can't be that naive, you know. When you think of, when your child asks you to go to a party, you know, this is what they're asking you to go to. They're not going somewhere where they're all sitting around, you know, talking about homework and, you know, talking about, you know, this is not what's going on at a party. A party is a drug house. It's a drinking house. It's like going to a bar, but it's not legal because everybody that's there at the party is doing things illegal. It's actually illegal because they're all underage and they're all doing drugs and they're all drinking. So they're going somewhere where if the police raid that place, your child's going to juvenile detention if he gets caught. So why would you let your child go to a party? Parents, let's ask ourselves. Let's stop and think. Let's consider. Let's not act impulsively. Let's be realistic. You know, really, Peaceful Solution Character Education is reality TV. This is reality TV, not the Kardashians, you know. Hey, the Kardashians know that there's a camera on them, okay? So they're going to act a certain way because there's a camera on them, okay? That's not reality TV. This is reality TV. You're learning here what reality is. The reality is when your child asks you to go to a party, you're allowing them to go somewhere that's illegal. They might as well have asked you, Mom, can I go to the dope house? Because that's where they're going. We need to grow up as adults. We need to grow up. We need to realize that we're living in a very dangerous society. We're in a very immoral society. And this is where our children are wanting to go. So the second question says, was Trisha respectful to her mother? Explain your answer. Well, no, she was not. First of all, she left the house without Mom's permission. Do y'all know what that's called? It's called stealing. She stole her mother's authority, right? Her mother's the authority. Isn't she supposed to go to her parent to ask to go outside or leave the house? That's what the peaceful solution teaches, that you have to have permission before you just leave your home. You have to ask Mom and Dad. That's being safe, asking Mom and Dad, letting them know where you're going to be, right? Then she argued with her mom rather than apologizing. She tried to justify her behavior, like, well, I knew you weren't going to understand, like, well, yeah, I would understand. She said she knew that I would be upset. This is what she told her mom. She knew that I would be upset and would not understand. Well, yeah, of course she's upset. You come home, hammered. Could have possibly gotten raped or abused by boys that have no morals. And not only do they have no morals, they don't have any self-control because they're drinking and doing drugs at the party. And your daughter's there. They're lacking any kind of moral character because they're at the party to begin with. And you're going to put your daughter in that situation? I'd be worried about a lot more than her coming home drunk. She could possibly be pregnant and have an STD, right? That's not even, said here, but that's the possibilities. So she argued with her mom rather than apologizing. She should have been very apologetic, very humble. She should have been, begging her mom, Mom, help me. I got some kind of drinking problem. Can you help me, Mom? Can you enroll me in some peaceful solution classes so I can learn to say no to negative behaviors, so I can learn, or can you talk to my school about getting the peaceful solution put in my school? So we can learn how to say no to these kind of things. So we can learn to value, our lives, value each other, value our society. Can we do that, Mom? Do you think we can do that, Mom? You think you could go to the school board meeting and tell them instead of having some of the activities that they have at schools that are really questionable? Do you think we could possibly ask them, Mom, to get a character education program put in place? Okay, so question number 3 says, how could Trisha have shown respect to her mother and herself? The answers will vary, but might include following the rules of the house, not sneaking out. That's dangerous, sneaking out, because you sneak out, something could occur to you, and your mom and dad wouldn't even know the first place to start looking for you because they don't know where you went. They don't even know you're gone. And then the police knock on the door at 2 a.m, informing the parent that something really bad occurred to the child, and the parents are just like, what? She was just sleeping in her room. I put her to bed at 9 o'clock. What do you mean she's dead? She's in her room. Not sneaking out, not arguing, not abusing alcohol. And in this case, not drinking at all because she's a teenager. She's not supposed to be drinking. Alcohol, anyway. not giving in to peer pressure, and choosing better friends. Remember, choosing better friends. Friends that don't encourage her to drink. Friends that don't encourage her to sneak out. Remember, friends don't encourage us to do immoral things. Remember that? Chris went over the steps to friendship, choosing friends, in the acceptance unit. All right. We got enough time to do scenario 2. Let's go ahead and put the next scenario up. It says, Ron and Jeff were at the park rollerblading. Feeling tired, they decided to sit on a park bench to cool off. Jeff pulled out his pocket knife and started carving his name onto the bench. Ron asked if he could have a turn because it looked like fun. Jeff handed him the knife. Just then, a park ranger came by in his truck and saw what Ron was doing. The park ranger explained to Ron and Jeff that they were defacing public property and that they would be liable for the damages. After explaining what they had done wrong, the park ranger politely asked the boys for their addresses and phone numbers so that he could make out a citation. Ron got angry and started yelling at the park ranger, calling him names. Jeff told Ron that he was making the situation worse and asked Ron to be quiet, but Ron started yelling at Jeff too. So, question number 1, did Jeff and Ron respect the park property? Well, no. Why? Because they're carving in it. They're defacing it. They got a knife and they're ruining the park bench that costs the taxpayers money. That's there for other people to sit down and enjoy, right? Number 2, did Ron show respect to the park ranger? Explain your answer. No, because he didn't. He started yelling at the park ranger. He's yelling. It's kind of like what I was saying about you get mad at the bill company, because they're sending you bills, or you're getting mad at your creditor because they're sending you bills. Hey, it's not their fault that you bought that. Why are you upset with the bill collector? They're just trying to collect the money that you spent, that you said that you would pay, that we said that we would pay. Hey, I don't like getting bills any more than you do, but I also realize if I get a bill, it's because I did something to get that bill. I'm a little more understanding about it nowadays. Okay. Number 3, did Jeff show respect to the park ranger? Explain your answer. Yes, Jeff did because he asked Ron to be quiet and he didn't yell at the park ranger. He had more, he was humble. He had humility. He was even telling his friend, hey, you're just making it worse. Why are you doing this? Okay. So he was actually practicing respect in that instance. Now, he wasn't practicing respect when he was carving his name in the bench, but he did show that he can show respect. But he has to learn how to he needs to learn how to be respectful at all times, you see, in every situation, not just because you can't say you're respectful if 1 minute you're carving in the bench and the next minute, you're being all polite to the guy that caught you carving in the bench. You have to be respectful consistently to be a respectful individual. So yes, Jeff was respectful because he was quiet. He didn't yell at the park ranger, excuse me. Number 4, what could the boys have done to show respect? Answers will vary, but could include they could have not damaged the park bench, and Ron could have been polite to the park ranger as well as to Jeff. And, I guess they could have picked up a piece of wood and carved it. There's probably some wood laying around there. They're in the woods, or if they're at the park, there might be some kind of tree branch laying around or something that they could carve on rather than public property, right? Because remember, again, carving into benches, it's called stealing. You're stealing because you're defacing someone else's property. You're destroying someone's property, and you don't have permission to destroy people's property. Right? None of us have that permission, so we need to learn to treat these other people's property the way we would like our property to be treated. That's showing true respect to others. So at this time, I'm out of time, and let's see. Today is the 4th, so it would be the 8th. I think it's the 8th. The 8th? Okay. So on the next class will be on 1/8/2023, 1/8/2023, at 5:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, and Katan should be the next teacher. You've been a great class tonight. We hope to see you again. Have a great evening.